Our next presentation will be by our Police Chief, Will Johnson.
Mayor and Council, Will Johnson, Police Chief. I'm pleased to be here to introduce our next presentation, body-worn cameras. Before I turn it over to the department's subject matter expert, Deputy Chief Oz Flores, for the presentation, I just want to kind of give some context that over the past 2 years, the Arlington Police Department has reviewed the technology commonly referred to as body-worn cameras. We've been in consultation with vendors. We've talked to other urban cities about how they have included the technology within their organizations. We've talked to all the different segments within the criminal justice system, particularly the DA's office, as this would represent collecting, processing, managing, transitioning potential evidence in criminal cases. And over these past 2 years, I think that we've become a more informed department on this technology, and we're here today to share some of that information and to seek your guidance on some potential policy questions that we have facing us as a city.
Thank you, Chief Johnson. Mayor, Council, Police Department Deputy Chief Oz Flores. So today I'm prepared to provide an overview of a recent body-worn camera pilot project that was conducted by the Police Department. Council was previously presented with a staff report authorizing an RFP procurement method to participate in a 6-month pilot. Various stakeholders were considered throughout this period, which included officers, support staff, City Attorney's Office, City Information Technology, District Attorney's Office, and citizens. While this pilot builds on previous research of body-worn cameras by examining their effect on perceptions of police legitimacy and professionalism among citizens who have had recent encounters with police officers, it also provided insight into organizational impact across these various stakeholders. So to provide a roadmap for today's presentation, I will highlight areas for your consideration, and these are surrounding legislative mandates, an overview of the pilot project, considerations for public policy deliberation, the required processing time for preparation and release of videos, provide some sample videos and budgetary requirements for broader implementation, and outline anticipated next steps based on Council's direction. The 84th Legislature passed Senate Bill 158, which provides specific regulation related to body-worn cameras. A working group of law enforcement professionals, including myself, provided feedback on the legislation throughout this process. Ultimately, the enacted legislation created a grant related to body-worn cameras to help defray the cost of initial implementation, and it also outlined specific policies within any agency with a body-worn camera program. And this is regardless whether or not that department is grant funded or not. Senate Bill 158 also provides open record guidelines specific to body cameras, which will be highlighted during this presentation. Conversely, it's important to understand that there is no equivalent legislative mandate for dash camera videos. As such, there will be differences in deployment, processing, and releasability of body-worn and dash camera videos. Almost all governmental records are subject to the Public Information Act. However, there are some instances where the legislature specifically provided that a particular document is not subject to this act. While all dash camera footage is subject to the Public Information Act, as the check marks reflect, there is a distinction regarding body-worn camera footage. Only those videos which could be evidence in a criminal action are subject to the Public Information Act. In an effort to address accidental recordings, footage which was not required to be recorded by departmental policy and doesn't have a law enforcement purpose is also specifically not subject to the Public Information Act. It is important to highlight that just because information is subject to the Public Information Act does not necessarily mean that it will be released. For example, the department may withhold information related to a pending criminal case. Another important factor to keep in mind is that even video which is not subject to the Public Information Act may be requested and often is obtained through a subpoena. This chart highlights some of the key differences with regards to what type of video is releasable. As you can see, in some circumstances, such as traffic stops, where there is no arrest, The body camera video can only be released with written authorization of the person who is the subject of this video. No such requirement applies to dash camera footage in the same incident. This is also true of video taken when an officer is in a private place, such as inside a person's home. If the person who is the subject of the video does not authorize the release, the body camera footage cannot be released. Dash camera video, on the other hand, can be released. Of course, the only insight into the events occurring inside the house would come from the audio being recorded by the officer's microphone, since the video recorder is in the car. This chart also highlights some of the common reasons why the city would be prohibited from releasing video footage captured by either dash cameras or body cameras. Recording individual criminal activity in which a suspect is a juvenile or where a child has been abused cannot be released. Information such as license plate numbers, driver's license numbers, and social security numbers must also be redacted. The common law right to privacy requires the redaction of information which is intimate or embarrassing, and the identity of sexual assault victims, and a medical or mental diagnosis. It has also been expanded to include a person's date of birth. However, an individual's address and phone number are generally releasable. Another key difference between body cameras and dash cameras is what information is required to be provided to the city by the person requesting the video. With regards to dash camera footage, the requester must only provide us with enough information for us to be able to locate the video. However, if the requester is asking for body-worn camera video, the requester must also provide the specific date, time, and location of the recording, in addition to the name of an individual who was the subject of that recording. With some notable differences in legislative mandates applicable in body-worn cameras and dash camera video platforms, there are some anticipated risks in operating in this environment, which would be important for council to consider. For example, the department may possess a video of interest that is not releasable under the law or is releasable only to a particular person. This could result in a situation in which there is public outcry for release of a video which the department is prohibited from releasing. There could also be circumstances such as a traffic stop where the video is released to the person who is the subject of the video. That person then edits the video and circulates it to the public. While we would be able to tell the public the video has been altered, without that person's permission, we would not be able to respond by releasing the unedited video. These anticipated risks highlight the challenges to manage the need for timely and responsive release of information to the public. While we may want to release the information to the community, we may not be authorized by law to do so. The minimum retention period for videos is 90 days. However, there may be additional time required by law depending on the degree of criminal offense, and that retention period can vary up to 50 years. This mandate factors into storage considerations to be discussed shortly. Internal affairs records involving officer-involved shootings, which result in injury or death, are maintained permanently by the police department. In any incident, video may be withheld based on a pending criminal investigation. Varying deadlines for initial response to the requester or notification to the Attorney General also depends on the platform used to record that interaction. Similarly, deadlines to submit records to the Attorney General for review may vary as well, as seen in the chart. In addition to the anticipated risks highlighted, there is an operational impact for video management inherent in broader deployment. First, multiple cameras present at one event magnifies the available video exponentially, which must be managed and processed. Additionally, it's important to understand that the time and resources required for gathering and processing records are required for an open records request, whether or not it is withheld by the Attorney General. If deemed releasable by the Attorney General, additional time and resources are required to then redact certain information discussed earlier in the presentation. So with this framework discussed, the 6-month pilot project evaluated organizational impact across field operations with officers who are likely to be in commonly recorded police-community interactions. User surveys were conducted to understand functionality and general experience by the officers. Through feedback received, some products were received favorably, while others were not. They provided feedback to assist in considering broader implementation. Users typically had notable preferences on product features, and overall the results indicated an impact to the organization in video processing and management. This pilot project was also conducted in partnership with the Police Executive Research Forum, and I anticipate that their findings will be available in late summer or early fall this year. Through contact surveys, researchers were able to evaluate differences in areas such as fairness, trust, professionalism, and satisfaction. Preliminary results have shown marginal differences based on the introduction of a body-worn camera. It also appeared that trust dissipated over time and could be influenced by many factors, including nationally highlighted incidents involving police officers. This solidifies our statement that body-worn cameras cannot replace the importance of genuine and ongoing relationships between police and community members. The Police Executive Research Forum contacted over 280 individuals and conducted telephone surveys and interviews to gauge their experience with the officer. The type of contact was divided into voluntary and involuntary consent with and without a body camera. Based on the preliminary results conveyed, it would appear that body-worn cameras marginally improve some perceptions within an agency that appears to already be doing well along those categories previously described. This affirms our commitment to community policing and procedural justice. Both internal and cloud-based solutions, video solution storages were evaluated. A key decision will be who owns the data and how long it will be transferred if vendors change over time. We will also need to consider the cost and amount of storage on each platform, the city's retention schedule, and how the video will be transferred or preserved. While the pilot offered some insight with approximately 50 concurrent users in operations, implementing a full-scale system of 350 units with permanent evidence storage and redaction needs will be significantly more complex. Can you move forward the slide, please? Thank you. So council must consider and weigh topics such as transparency, public trust, the potential erosion of privacy rights, and federally required management and supervision when making decisions for broader implementations. Some key policy questions to consider are: how will we provide the information? Is there value in this investment to increase trust and transparency? Does the intrusive nature of public video outweigh the community's right to privacy? How will the city and department ensure broader implementation is meeting legal requirements and an acceptable return on investment? And lastly, how will we manage the administrative, operational oversight, and internal review process of this technology? I have provided a few video clips captured during this pilot project to highlight some of the considerations and requirements spoken of today. In this example, a criminal mischief report was reported to an officer utilizing a body-worn camera. The original video length was 31 minutes, and the processing time for the video was 2 hours. Items to consider when viewing this video is that this and several products that exist in the market have pre-event recording features which record video only up to 30 seconds from activation by the officer. That pre-event recording feature may capture factors that lead to a police action. Not all products offer that feature. Another point is discussions on differentiation between body-worn and dash camera videos. Both provide a unique perspective. As you will see when activated in the vehicle, the body camera will only capture a limited view while seated in that vehicle. You will also notice from this video the redaction capabilities. Multiple zones of redaction were manually created to redact areas of video such as the mobile data computer, license plate information, any audio related to personally identifiable information. license plate numbers, and even the officer's notebook used to take down information. Redaction capabilities tested during the pilot were not as advanced and intuitive as we would prefer, so redaction zones in some cases were manually created by video frame. We'll now show you this video.
Morning. Hello. So what's going on? Okay. Gotcha. We've actually already had two other reports
Around here?
Yeah. Just on the other side of Cooper Street where the other two are, but
Oh, really?
yeah.
The one in the back completely shattered.
This one? Okay. Yeah, on the other side of Cooper Street. It's gonna be some teenage boys driving around with pellet guns.
And again, for the purposes of this presentation, we only showed an excerpt of the full video. On this next video required additional redaction because it is not generally releasable without the consent of the individual involved in the accident. However, it's important to include it in this briefing as it will be one of the most common scenarios that our officers will capture in their cameras. In this particular incident, the original video length was 22 minutes and required just over twice that time to process that video. While there are some similarities to the previous video on information redacted, it is important to understand the multiplying factor as 4 officers were on this service call. If all officers were equipped with a body-worn camera and a dash camera, footage from 8 devices would need to be reviewed to process an open records request. Factors such as the type of call, the number of camera-equipped officers, and the amount of legislatively required redaction all affect the amount of time and resources required to process and prepare videos for release. And we'll now play this one for your view as well.
Who's in this car? Y'all two? Who's in the driver's seat, passenger? What happened?
Man, that dude was him.
Hold on. What lane were y'all in?
I'm in his lane.
Right lane.
No,
Going
I'm in the left lane.
left lane. Going south.
Right.
Okay.
And he was in the vehicle and pulled out in front of us. And they're saying, everybody.
Okay.
You can not some people that they talking to right now. They see.
Okay. Do you have your driver's license on you? And then an insurance. Is it in the car or you got it?
I just bought the car, man.
Okay.
I just bought the car.
I mean, no. Okay. Do you have your ID on you? None of y'all are hurt?
No.
Okay.
Who's driving this car?
You're in the passenger seat? What's your last name? Did your airbag go off? Yeah.
Yep.
You alright? Do you think you need EMS or anything?
This next video footage was captured as an officer responded to a disturbance at a school which involved an adult. No juvenile was suspected of an offense. This will be important to understand as the video highlights a nexus to privacy rights involving juveniles. Under current legislation, videos which contain juveniles can be released without redactions, except when it involves a juvenile suspected of a crime or in instances of child abuse. We'll now play this video for you.
when they hear certain statements. Yeah, I understand. Okay, you gotta understand that, the impact of certain words. I ain't never been told no lies, nothing. Right. Perfect if you are, right.
On this next video, I will show a 30-second sample from a body-worn camera and a second short video displaying a different perspective from a dash-mounted camera for the same use of force encounter. While I would have liked to share more of the video with you, there are some legislative restrictions which prevent me from fully disclosing the video in its entirety. As you can imagine, incidents involving use of force can draw immediate and widespread attention, and the inability to release segments of the video highlight inherent risks previously discussed. You will see that body camera footage stopped during the altercation. This can be caused by a number of factors, including shutting off when the power button is inadvertently pressed. If the use of force encounter would have escalated into an officer-involved shooting, there may be expectations that the video is available when in fact it is not. Additionally, you will see that multiple and overlapping video platforms such as the body-worn camera and dash camera may provide additional perspectives to the incident. So now I'll show you the perspective from the body camera.
Think we have enough? Think so? I think so. Go on, turn around, face the car. You're going to be under lawful detention.
No, I won't. Better get back, Jack. I'm serious. You're going to have to blow back. You better not touch me. I'm not playing.
You're not?
Better get back.
Come on.
I'm fucking with you, don't you? All right.
Ring it out.
So in that instance, the camera shut off during the altercation. So this next video will show a different perspective of the same incident from the dash camera mounted camera.
Answer the question.
All right. Are you out here
Don't
preaching?
fucking walk around the system, brother.
Okay. Are you talking to
Answer
anybody?
the question. I said answer the question.
I think we have enough. Think so? I think so. Go on, turn around, face the car. You're going to be under lawful detention.
No, I won't. I'm serious. You're going to have to blow back. You better not touch me. I better get back.
Come on.
I'm fucking with you, don't you?
All right. Bring it out.
Get out! Get out! Roll over! Roll over! Give me that motherfucker! Roll over! No! There you go! I will not! Roll over! You motherfucker! You get down! Fall to the ground! Relax! Get your hands off me, boy! Yeah, hold it for one side. Let me get him one side. Fuck you, big boy! You can't even move! What's wrong? Are you feeling stupid, bitch? Fuck you! Get him off of me!
Apologize for the language, but as you can imagine, that's something that our officers have to deal with occasionally. Based on our projections for needs associated with broader implementation of 350 cameras, we anticipate a $2.9 million initial investment for acquisition, network infrastructure, supervision, and technical and legal support in fiscal year 2017. The key challenge of full implementation is the labor costs associated with maintaining the cameras, handling individual videos, and monitoring legal compliance of their use. Personnel include supervision to support averaging 2 sergeants per shift to ensure the department is maintaining compliance and use during shifts, and auditing the management of evidence, as well as the increased open records request and legal support for 350 units. Subsequent years would require approximately $2.2 million of an annual investment for maintaining the program and personnel. To defray the cost, a confirmed state grant award of $225,000 with a matching requirement and a pending federal grant of just over $360,000 with a matching requirement can assist with initial acquisition. However, grant funds for personnel support are not allowed. Also, a $1.8 million COPS hiring grant is being submitted to support the personnel needs, in addition to the state and federal grants being submitted for equipment. Since this is a complex issue, The intended strategy was to provide council insight into our research and possible options outside of the budget process to allow for thorough deliberation. If interested in proceeding with implementing a program, the department would work with the city manager's office through the budget process, and council should anticipate further action to accept our pending state grant award, issue an RFP, and potentially approve a contract for implementation in fiscal year 2017. So with that, this concludes my prepared comments, and I'm prepared to, and available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, you guys kind of test drove several different types of body cams. Which one did you decide on and why?
Councilmember Parker, we as part of the RFP process to start on the pilot project, there were 3 vendors selected. Those, we have received very specific feedback on those vendors to be able to model a next RFP to move forward should council decide we want to do that. So with that sensitivity to that potential RFP, we've received feedback from them, but absent that, we've tested 3 different products.
But you did decide or did not decide on a specific company that you wanted to work with in the future as far as body cams go?
Sure. There were 3 vendors that had participated in the RFP, which was Taser, Panasonic, and VIEVU. We've received feedback from the officers that's specific to that will help us guide the next RFP process should council decide that that's the direction we want to go with.
Were there differences in the ability to store or produce the videos? You know what I'm saying? The process itself, was there a user-friendly aspect of one rather than the other one?
There were some differences between the 3. I can tell you that based on the feedback that we received, we got feedback on not only general usability by the officers, but also specific feedback on the back-end support and how that would impact city operations and certainly with IT operations as well. That, Mr. Parker, I believe that's going to help us in being able to craft the next RFP.
I look forward to seeing where this goes. It should be very interesting.
Thank you.
Mr. Glaspie?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, did you get any sense of difference in how policemen conducted themselves and all with this? So you think as you theoretically have things that potentially make it more transparent, there may be some adjustments in how you approach it. I was just wondering.
Sure, Mr. Glaspie, absolutely. We've gotten some feedback not only from officers, from user feedback, but then also the perf component that we had worked on this pilot. We received feedback from the citizens that we've contacted, and they provided feedback in terms of professionalism and trust and transparency. I believe the general consensus is that it does provide an additional layer of transparency. And as we have talked about before, if that continues to support our commitment to procedural justice, then that would be one that we would be interested in looking into.
Mr. Rivera?
Chief, great review. I know this is something our police department has been working on for a while. I know it's something that our citizens have greatly anticipated and feel that it would not only benefit the police department, but again, that level of transparency, that level of public trust, and ultimately will improve public safety. So with that, our officers who participated with the pilot program, what were their reactions? Was there any feeling of apprehension, or is this outside of council approval? Really, what is the Chief, your specific thoughts on the program, and again the input from our officers, whether how on board are they with it, and do they understand the global reasons behind it?
Our officers are committed to the community's will. So at the end of the day, if the citizens of Arlington want us to wear body cameras, we'll wear body cameras. But I've also stated repeatedly that our cops are human. And so what we're doing is we're attaching an appendage to them in the performance of their duty, and there's a certain transitional period of getting used to that in terms of how do you make it work, how do you make sure that you are are turning it on consistently when you're supposed to turn it on? How do you make sure that you've consistently turned it off whenever it should be off, i.e. Bio breaks and that sort of thing? So I do think that there's a transition period, but I think that at the end of the day, whether we deploy a body camera program in Arlington, Texas is more of a policy decision in terms of what does the community want.
Right.
And that we provide the necessary information to calibrate that program so that it's resourced appropriately so that it can be successful.
Chief, part of the discussion from the neighborhoods has been not only the protection of our, the people of Arlington, but also protection of our officers as well. As you know, there's a lot of finger pointing that happens on almost a daily basis from citizen interaction, and so these cameras should help with that. And then also from the city standpoint, it should also help in preventing lawsuits, and definitely would be a tool to support the people of Arlington from negligent lawsuits where it just is inaccuracies on a lot of individuals' parts with their involvement with our officers that are dedicated and are doing the right things. So thank you.
Without a doubt, I believe that body cameras will improve accountability both for employees and for the community. And I absolutely agree with your statement that I think that body camera footage will corroborate noble and professional work by our public servants.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for this report. We'll continue to be discussing it. It is a major decision to be made and a major impact that we have here on our budget, on our community. And with that,
do we have direction to bring this forward in the budget proposals? Is that what I'm?
Yes, we do want to bring it forward and study it there in the budget proposal. Everybody in agreement on that? Okay, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering, the amount, if we're looking at $2.9 million, I think, for all these cameras, what's the amount of the grant that, the federal grant that could come to us?
Well, the federal grant is still in the application process. A state grant is for $225,000 with a $55,000 match. And if the desire was to move forward, we'll be bringing forward an application for a federal cops hiring grant as well for the supervisory component.
Ms. Capehart.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, with regard to the cameras themselves, who would be outfitted with them? Is it just patrol officers? Is it, who would get the body cameras?
Patrol officers is the lion's share of where it will go, but we have other field units that routinely work out in the community in uniform and in a marked unit. Then the desire would be to outfit those individuals with body cameras as well.
Okay, and so what's the life expectancy of these cameras?
It depends on the use, but I think that we could anticipate a 3 to 5 year cycle of replacement going forward.
So we would need to have that in consideration when we're talking about the budget, about
Yes, ma'am.
maintenance and O&M.
And part of the RFP would speak to that. There are two different business models that are presently out there. One is a purchase and replacement plan, and one is more of just a subscription-based leasing option.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it.